This is the Future of the Future show. I am your host, Mateo Berbejicio. In a world where artificial intelligence is no longer just a tool, but a constant companion, what is happening to the very way that we think? From how we solve problems to how we teach our children, AI's influence is not just reshaping our jobs, it's reshaping our minds. Today, we are joined by Dr. Ashwin Mehta, an AI strategist and organizational futurist who explores the deep and often overlooked impact of AI on human cognition. With decades of experience guiding industries through technological change, Dr. Mehta helps us understand the silent trade-offs of cognitive offloading, the skills we must urgently preserve, and how we can strike a balance between the efficiency of machines and the intuition of the human mind. This is a conversation about the future of our thoughts and the future of ourselves. Ashwin, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to having a good discussion about this.
Very good. Ashwin, let's get started with the very basics. What do you do today for a living? And tell us a little bit about your story for the benefit of the audience.
Yeah, so these days I'm running an AI and tech consultancy business called Methodology. And really, this is an end-to-end consultancy. So from the very first question around artificial intelligence or any other kind of technology, because there are others out there, blockchain, digital twins, all of these things still exist. And from the very first question, how do we get started? What should we be doing as an organization? I get involved in those discussions, starting to identify business problems, thinking about what solutions can fit those problems, how we can work towards either efficiency or better outcomes for businesses that lead to value, that lead to revenue, that lead to customer success and things like that. And how then do we move through navigating the market? Because the AI market is changing daily. Yeah. So how do we choose the right tools? How do we choose the things that are going to be around for a while? Or do we need to build something bespoke because the need is so niche? And then moving clients through that trajectory of, well, how do we retrieve our data? What does our data look like? How can we structure it efficiently so that we can use AI? All the way through to skills, and how do we mobilize an organization in terms of AI literacy and data literacy. So that's kind of an end-to-end consulting proposition. I have a few products which I use. And of course, my business is structured agentic first. So the business has been around for 3 years, and I've been fortunate that I don't have legacy systems and legacy organizational structures. I can just build from the start with AI. So I've been trying to scale my business to, at the start of the year, I had this kind of ambition where I said, I want to have 50 people's worth of work with no people. I want to be able to just do it with no people, just fully agentically. And I did get to the point about a month ago where I hired a person, because there are things you need people for as well.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that for the last 3 years. I have led learning technologies or cognitive functions as well. And artificial intelligence and innovation in a global pharmaceutical company. I used to be in a Big Four consulting firm. I have an MBA and a PhD looking at structural equation modeling of human-computer interactions and adoption and how people interact with technologies. So that is the thing that's the thing that spurred me onto this track of looking at machine learning and neural networks and all of these things before the generative AI revolution happened. But my first degree and master's was in chemistry. So I came from hard sciences through all of the other stuff to eventually look at learning and technology as something that people and machines work hand in hand to improve businesses.
How does it, a question that comes to mind, how does it feel? You have been in the field for a while, before the hype, right? And now there's a lot of so-called experts on AI, right? And how does it feel to you, for someone that has been on the field, that has gone so deep on the field, what is going today? Do you see it as a great opportunity? Do you see that there's a lot of noise around it as well, or both?
It's a little bit of both. So there is a lot of opportunity in this space. And I think, I can't remember whether it was Sam Altman that said this, but he was saying you could have a unicorn, $1 billion company, which is one person who's really good with AI tools. I think, are we there yet? I don't think so, but we're getting to that point where serious value can be created with a very low headcount. So that's a real thing, and that's a huge opportunity for all of us because it shakes up the competitive landscape. Big businesses, these 100, 200,000 headcount businesses with operations and offices everywhere, they are held back by things like bureaucracy, procedure, sometimes not always needed. Whereas small businesses can just operate in an agile way and do whatever they need to quickly to make something happen. And previously, that dynamic wasn't equal because a small business would be constrained in capability. Now we don't have that same constraint. So the opportunity is huge. But as you say, at the same time, you have lots of armchair experts who suddenly have an opinion. We'll be talking about various things, saying the word strategy a lot and getting into, some big businesses and talking about strategy. And I have been fortunate in this space because I have received quite a few engagements that have where a company engaged one of these armchair experts from LinkedIn and they got something that didn't work. And then they eventually came to me and said, what do we do? So there's a little bit of fixing involved, but then you can turn the situation around and do something that's tangible as long as it's got good analysis and assumptions behind it. So there's that kind of that consulting approach, which doesn't necessarily exist if somebody is just an armchair expert. And it's kind of the big danger of these times, really, that because everybody's got an opinion, you don't really know where to go. So due diligence is quite important.
Yeah, 100% in agreement. So many discussions about AI focus on jobs, productivity, or ethics, but you emphasize its effect on human cognition. Why do you think this is the most urgent or perhaps the least discussed dimension?
So I think it's the least discussed dimension because one of the things that I do is data literacy. And depending on where you go in the world, and it's important to acknowledge that this is different in different geographies. But depending on where you go, data literacy is greater or lesser. Uh, how much does the population, generally speaking, understand data? And I'll give the example that I usually give. I always talk about the same example because it's the most important thing that we can understand. And that is the concept of normal distribution. So in a population, you have, let's say, height or weight or any attributes that you can measure in a population.
Yep.
And they will be distributed such that you have a population mean, you have standard deviations from the mean, and you tend to get this kind of curve that's like this. And on the far ends, you get high performers or low performers. And the reason I'm mentioning this as something that's important is we have had this conversation in all over social media, all over LinkedIn for the last couple of years, and that is, what do people actually do? Should people be engaged with critical thinking and creativity and empathy and problem solving and some of these things that we think are inherently human, but they're effectively on this cognitive scale. We're thinking, we are taking stimulus from our environment, we have social constructivism, and we have the world view, the beliefs that we hold, and we know these to be true in our culture or our geography, wherever we are, and we can apply the rules and the values of our culture against the problems and against the stimulus that is an information stimulus, and we can produce new things. And this is a very theoretical view because the reason I mentioned normal distribution is we all do these things to a greater or lesser efficacy. Not every single person is amazing at critical thinking.
Right.
And this is something that dominates the entire landscape of this conversation. But it's important to realize that even critical thinking will be normally distributed across a population, the capability to do that. Why is that important? It's important because problem solving, let's take problem solving as an example. Problem solving. Machines are getting better at problem solving. We have agents that have the capability to reason through chain of thought. We can demonstrate reasoning. The latest models that are out there are very good at these things in benchmark tests. It's not the same as real world application, but it's benchmarking. Now, we are reaching a point, we've already reached this point, let's face it, where the machine capability is greater than the population mean of humans.
Yeah.
We're talking about models that behave very well. We see this in the media, model something, passed a test as if it was a PhD candidate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's not pretend PhD candidates are going to be the mean. They're slightly above the mean, right? So you generally have this aspect of population dynamics, which is poorly understood because of data literacy, means that this problem is not on the tip of everybody's tongue. It's not the thing we're debating. Can a machine outthink most of the population? That is problematic. It's problematic that we don't discuss it. And it's also problematic that nobody seems to know about this thing. It's a difficult thing to realize. So these couple of aspects together, from data literacy and the understanding of normal distribution through to the understanding of model capability for reasoning, means that we have a tricky discussion around cognition and what it actually means in an applied sense. Because talking about cognition in a theoretical sense is it's not that useful. We need to be thinking about cognition in an applied sense. What do people actually do with their thoughts?
As you were speaking, I was looking sideways. I'm sorry, because I was trying to find a book, Thinking Fast and Slow, by Daniel Kahneman, right? And how bad we are at statistics and data literacy, and what you were saying, and it happens even at people that have a high degree of education. We are still bad, right? It's as humans, we are wired in a way in which we need so much of heuristics and biases and everything to go on through our days without burning our brains, that we are wired to not be good at data, statistics, literacy, and all of that. So that's amazing. I hear you loud and clear. So what's the effect, right? We seem to be outsourcing more thinking tasks to machines. How do you think this is affecting our critical thinking and decision making over time, and knowing that AI is better than us at resolving a lot of problems?
That's an interesting question. So the first thing is what I said earlier about the paradigm. How do we believe thinking happens, and what do we know about this? And part of what we know about this is that we need a stimulus to make sure that we think about something, and that stimulus could be anything. It could be the temperature that we experience when we touch something. It could be the light that we experience when we look into the sky. It could be a paper that we read. It could be a conversation that we have. And looking at AI in isolation, of course, we have other factors. The last few years, we've all been working in isolation and talking with each other less. So we have less social stimulus as well. But all of these things are a stimulus, an informational stimulus that allow us to think, stimulate that thought process. And through that thought process, we, of course, take that information, we create knowledge, we maybe create new thoughts, we create structures, and we go and do productive things with that. It's not the only source, because there's also the ability to solve problems. But if we start with the stimulus idea, now using AI models for most of what we do means we have a reduced quality of stimulus, because we are asking a question to an agent and they're doing all of the thinking for us. They're producing the output, and all we have to do is review it.
Yeah.
Now, in that chain, as long as we do review it, we're now reading as a stimulus, and that's okay. But as a pragmatist, I think how many people who are interacting with ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, Gemini, any of these models, and saying, produce me a report on X, give me a curriculum on Y. Do you really read it all? Because if you don't, then even that stimulus is gone.
Yeah.
So you have asked the question and it's produced the response and you've not read it and off you go. Now, in the old days, show my age a little bit, but in the old days, we used to study materials. We used to write out the materials and then summarize them and then summarize them again. You'd study for an exam. You'd go over it and over it until you understood it. You'd go and do some exam questions and you'd really try and figure out that you could apply whatever you had learned to whatever question they were going to ask. And nowadays, who does the summarizing? Nobody. Nobody's
Yeah.
summarizing anything. We have an AI agent that does all of that. And the act of summarizing itself means that you are digesting some material, refactoring that material, and producing an output that is a cogent and coherent summary of that material. That act itself has gone completely. Nobody's doing that anymore. So if we take, nobody's doing the summarization, nobody's really, I'm not saying nobody, probably some people are, I do, but nobody's really engaging with the output. And if we're not engaging with the summary, we're not engaging with the source material, and we're not engaging with the output, then where is our stimulus? And that's the very first step of cognition. We don't have a stimulus. The second part of this, which is also important, is how do we solve problems? Now, with AI, there are problems. These are existential problems. These are societal problems. We talk about jobs. We talk about economics. We talk about the ability to have income, and all of these things are, big meaty questions, but they're not tangible problems that people can sink their teeth into and do some real thinking around. So now we don't have the stimulus, but also our lives are quite easy, and we don't have lots of problems to solve on a daily basis. So the problem solving exercise isn't happening. And the third aspect to this, of course, is let's think about neuroplasticity and think about the concept of use it or lose it. If you're not exercising your problem solving skills, how good are you going to be at problem solving?
Yeah.
How good are we at fact checking? How good are we at discriminating between what is real and what is not real in terms of information? How easy is it on social media for us to be talking about misinformation? We can be, because people aren't scrutinizing what's in front of them. So all of these things come together in effectively a perfect storm, which means we're not getting stimulus. If we do get stimulus, we're not having to think through it. We don't have a problem where we need to apply the stimulus or the lessons that we learned. And we're therefore atrophying in the things that we need to be doing as thinking beings, while at the same time being told human beings are going to be needed for critical thinking. It seems paradoxical to me.
So many questions that pop to mind. I will save some for later, but do you think there's a different way? So many times when I talk about this with other people, we go like, okay, it's different by generations, because our generation, we were there when none of this existed. We saw the birth of the internet. We, so many things and so we know two ways of thinking, right? With AI, without AI. And so we can balance that, and we can, apply what we think is our critical thinking to the way of doing things with AI today, right? And what you said, like, okay, I'm going to review the output, and that's going to be the stimulus, and I'm going to spend time really reviewing the output and thinking about what's coming there, and question the AI and go back and forth, blah, blah, blah. What do you think about new generations? And they are growing, with AI. I have two children, 7 and 9 year olds, right? And the way that they interact with AI, it's just normal for them, right? They have a question and they go, let's ask ChatGPT, right? And then they start having a conversation with ChatGPT. What do you see there? Are there advantages? Do you think there's kind of a hybrid intelligence popping up in new generations? Do you see hope there, or what are or not so much? What do you see?
So in everything that I've said up to this point in our conversation, at no point have I said that the loss of cognitive function is a good or a bad thing.
Okay.
It's simply an effect, because the context of that is that what will future generations need to know? That may be very different. Maybe they don't need all of these things that I've just spoken about. maybe what they need is to have that collaborative relationship with the machine. It's a little bit too early to be able to tell, but we do know that human beings generally will adapt to the things that they need to know. So when you say children nowadays of that kind of age are interacting with AI in a way that it's a companion, they're asking, we have, I guess we have the concept of the Vygotskian more knowledgeable other, where you have things like stretch goals, and you would say there is a zone of proximal development where you can ascertain whether or not two individuals are going to perform differently based on the support that they have, the scaffolding that they have. And if that comes from an AI agent, that's great. We might be able to therefore see a difference in terms of attitude, aptitude, and all of these things. Does that mean it's a good or a bad thing? I think it's too early for us to tell, but we do know that nearly every generation adapts to the technology that it has. The sticky point for us is that we don't know what the problems are going to be in the future.
Yeah.
And it's probably the first time in generations where we have almost completely blank view of what it's going to be. We don't know. Everybody's speculating. Are people going to be useful, productive? Is this going to be the age of the machine? Is everything going to be done for us? Are we going to have robots in our living rooms washing our dishes? And there's so much speculation that the noise adds to this, of course, but it's difficult to perceive what the future might be because everything is changing so quickly. So is it going to be different? Yes. I think there's going to be a more collaborative relationship in the future between humans and AI, or the digital environment generally.
Right.
Whether or not it's a good or a bad thing, I think I reserve my judgment. But we also need to think about, so recently in the UK, they had this Online Safety Act, which came out, requiring everybody to upload their ID documents to third-party providers, etc. I think we have a rocky road ahead of us when it comes to our ability to cope with these things, because governments don't really know how to do it properly. They're going to be trying things, they're going to be failing, they're going to be succeeding. All of these things are going to be in the mix. So the future is to some degree unclear.
Got it. Let's talk about education. That's part of the future, and I know it's unclear as well. I know it's part of the future that we don't know how, right? But again, I go back to my children and looking at the school they go to and going like, it's a hard job to have right now. To be an educator today in this world is a hard job, right? And I want to ask you a question, but also tell you a dream, right? I if I get optimistic, I imagine like my kids going to school, getting into a room full of different tools, right? And so they have, I don't know, they get a challenge and they go like, okay, you need to build a drone boat that needs to be able to cross XYZ river. You have all of these tools and you have 2 days, go. And they have like a 3D printer, computer with access to all of the AI, et cetera, et cetera. But we are, like you said, we are stretching our goals and we are pushing them to do things we never imagined it will be possible for a 10-year-old, some time ago, right? We're going Star Trek, right? How do you think about the future of education and how do you think it should evolve? What are your thoughts?
So I think there are two things we need to consider there. So the first is the technological capability. I think as you've said, there's going to be more digital, there's going to be more simulation, there's going to be more AI. And I think that's inevitable, and it's probably a good thing because it does to some degree level access. If everybody has access, then everybody has equal opportunity, and that's a good thing. But the other side of me thinks, because I work in the corporate spectrum, so I don't work in schools, I don't necessarily work in universities, but I think my sister is actually my sister's a high school teacher. My mother was a primary school teacher. My father was a secondary school teacher. So I have the education in my family. And I think that when we have this discussion, the thing that usually gets missed, but I will make sure that it's front and center, is the purpose of school age education. So young children coming up through kindergarten, going through to the age of 10 or 11, into secondary school. The purpose of that is to give everybody a baseline of what it means to be a productive citizen in society.
Okay.
And the baseline of values of communication, of mathematics, of science, of history and geography, having a basic understanding of what's going on around you, being able to interact with others, being able to interact with the environment, having some kinds of skills that enable you to go and either develop in higher education or to go and work in the workforce. This is really the purpose of school. And it's less about specifics and more about being a socialized and productive citizen.
Right.
If we focus on that, then should the fundamentals of school change? Now, there are three aspects. I don't know if you know about interaction equivalence theorem, but it's a concept in education where you have learner interactions, so peer interactions. You have learner teacher interactions, so this is the scaffolding, the more knowledgeable person. And then you have learner content interactions. When we talk about simulations, we talk about these kinds of activities, we're only really talking about one dimension.
Okay.
The other dimensions, children need to play with children. They need to experiment with children. They need to socialize. They need to form those bonds. They need to understand the boundaries of society and how you interact with others. They also need to some degree, be comfortable with the idea of either authority or discipline, and making sure that we understand that there are people out there in the world who have more experience and know something more than we do. So there are lots of aspects to school. And I think the digital aspect really could touch on all of these things. But when we see the future, we tend to focus on the content.
Okay.
If children had a safe digital companion for life, that's a possibility, right?
Yeah.
So that could be a peer that they interact with. It could be a buddy that they talk to. It could be a therapist. It could be a companion. It could be a teacher. It could be a tutor. It could be a coach. All of these things are possible. So I think there are lots of possibilities in future.
Every time you answer a question, it's like I have so many more questions to ask, but we only have limited time, so I will keep going. Let's go back to critical thinking. You talked about critical thinking being a survival skill for the AI era. Tell me more about that. What does upskilling in critical thinking actually look like in practice, and who should be responsible for it? Schools, employers, individuals?
So it needs to start in school. I think everything has to start in school, and not only in school, but also with parents. I'm a little bit old school where I think parents and schools both have a responsibility to bring up their children. Critical thinking as it evolves. So in the corporate space, adult education, I think very strongly, I have a strong opinion about this. And that is that you cannot teach critical thinking or growth mindset or independent thought or logic or any of these things by taking people into a classroom and spoon feeding them with the answer. Right. It's paradoxical that independent thought in a structured manner can only really be done by giving people guidelines, of course, but then they need to exercise that capability. They need to exercise that capability in an environment that is free of judgment and politics, because a lot of corporations are, unfortunately, full of those things. And we need to also be comfortable with a fact, and I'm going to say it as a fact rather than an opinion, that in corporations and in politics and in society, that decisions are not always made through critical thinking. Decisions are made for a variety of reasons, and those reasons may not always be transparent. So these kinds of things are difficult to exercise, but in that difficulty gives the richness of normal distribution. I don't want anybody to go away from listening to me on any podcast thinking, if I just go and do a course on critical thinking, I'll be a top performer. I'll be in that top 5%. I will have a job for life and everybody else will be, it doesn't work like that. You need to compete. And one of the things that I think has gone from life over the last 10 years is this concept of competition. Work is competitive. Life is competitive. And everybody gets a participation trophy now, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Competing with each other for these things is vitally important. And if you want to compete in critical thinking, you need to to some degree, have peer interactions, social interactions, problems to solve, problems that require critical thinking, not easy problems. And there needs to be a tangibility of solution that you can actually execute. These things are important. Now, why do I say these things are important? These are the same things 5 minutes ago that I said are lacking in modern life.
Yeah.
Because life is easy. So it's going to be an uphill struggle, I think, for many people.
So no, I completely agree.
Speechless.
Again, I'm speechless because I'm thinking, right? I'm thinking about the school. I'm
Yeah.
thinking about my children. I hear you speaking, and I think about everything that I can relate to, and I agree, right? And I think it's weird how even in sports, right? When I was young in sports, it was brutal, right? There was
Yeah.
an A team, there was a B team, or there was not making it to a team, right? And
Yeah.
nowadays, if we are in a place which I still think there are good things about it, where everyone plays, right? But gone are the days of okay, the best ones are playing, the best ones are making it to the A team, right? And I keep going to what you said. I think there's like a cliff between that, you know, wonderland of school and high school, and then you go to the real world and work, and you face that fierce competition, right? And if you have not been trained to see what that competition looks like and to have the resilience to go through that competition and either win or lose, understand how you are going to navigate it, I think it's tough. So I completely agree with you, and I see it on a day-to-day basis. Let's talk about human intuition and machine logic. Where do you see the boundaries between what AI can do and where human intuition is unique and very specially suited for?
Yeah. So I think we're rapidly entering an age where machine logic can do a lot of things. And there are two parts to why that's true. So the first part is the capability of machines right now is greater than it's ever been, and it's only going to accelerate.
Hmm.
The other thing is that our capability as humans of being able to dissect and quantify the things that we do has also become a lot better over the last probably 20 years. So now we are able to partition nearly anything we do into tasks that are repeatable, standardizable, have some kind of measurement around them. And the more we can do that, the more things fall into the arena of machines because we have automation capability. We have workflows that can be equipped with assistants or with agents. We have the capability to retrieve data from pretty much anything that we want. We have the capability now to observe our environment. We have cameras everywhere. You can do computer vision allows us to see and parse video data. So we're entering this age of a perfect storm where machine capability and logic is very high, and our ability to partition what we do into discrete tasks is also very high. So I think that gives us a clue as to what the machine can do. And the machines are very now the machine being everything I've just said, very, very capable. What about humans? Now, if we think about the corporate space, we're still in that age, and I don't think this is ever going to go away, where sales are done person to person. You look the other person in the eye, you find out what makes them tick, what do they want, what can you deliver, where is the value proposition, and you shake a hand over that thing. And that still very much is a person to person interaction. We also have the concept of teams. So, not Microsoft Teams, teams of people that are working hand in hand to go and do things. And that might be a team of consultants in an office, it might be a team of people digging holes on a railway track, anything in between. The concept of haptics and psychomotor activities, where you need to touch, feel, do things
Yeah.
that interact with the environment. The robotics era isn't really there yet.
Right.
It will be at some point, but right
Yeah.
now it isn't. So our ability to touch and manipulate our environment at the same time as our ability to interact with our teammates, other people. All of these kinds of things are pretty much in the human domain now. Not that they will never go away, but it seems quite unlikely at the moment that it's going to be a rapid change. And then the other side of things is, we are in an increasingly isolated society. So people are lonelier than they've ever been. People crave companionship more than they ever had. Relationships are becoming more transactional amongst younger generations. So I've heard on Instagram. So there are these things that lead us to an idea that mental health and well-being might be more important in the future. And there have been some kind of experiments, or people are using things like ChatGPT as a therapist. But you have to acknowledge that all of that is being logged, and it's accessible by your enforcement agency. So think about those things. But there is, to some degree, not really any substitute for human-to-human interaction. So we have these kind of human aspects. We also have the ethical quandaries. Where should we use AI? How should we be regulating this stuff? What's the impact on society? How are we going to provide for people who don't have jobs? Those big questions, I think, also still need to be driven by humans. But a lot of the transactional kind of activity-based, task-based things that we can form into processes, I think that is going to be the big efficiency drive for society.
I have a final question to you. Let's think about a future worth building, right? If you, Ashwin, could design the ideal relationship between AI and human cognition for the next, I was going to say 50 years, but it's so hard, right? But I want to put you in that spot, right? So what principles will guide and design that relationship? But what first steps can, we take today to get us there?
So the first steps that I think we need to take are basic literacy for everybody, AI literacy and data literacy. And the reason that's important is that even if we imagine a future where AI and humans are symbiotic, there is synergy between them in nearly every task, all day, every day, everything that you do is supported by AI. It would be like one of those science fiction films where the person is supported by a robot and they have super strength. You'd be entering an era where people have superhuman capabilities. Anything you want to retrieve any information from anywhere you can just by a thought. We're not there yet. I'm just sort of spinning a fantasy, right? But in order for us to get there, we need to solve some problems around the literacy space. And that is, how do people use AI? Most people right now are still going to a GPT interface or a Copilot interface on their own, and they're typing some things in and getting a response out. That's, at the moment, the way the market has moved, that's child's play. People should be moving on from this stuff pretty quickly. The second part of this is understanding basic data concepts. And it's easy to go to a vibe coding tool, Lovable, Replit, Cursor, any of these things, Claude 4, make an app, deploy the app, put it into a store, walk away. The app falls over in 2 minutes because it can't handle the data. And then we're all done. It starts to debug itself, right? I mean, these things happen regularly. So we have this kind of, make it quickly and walk away without understanding what's going on kind of mentality. So I think that all of this basic literacy stuff needs to change. If we are to move into a future where we say, people are supported by the technology in a way that moves us towards being superhuman, whatever that means, then that's going to have to change. But also resourcing and equality are going to have to change, because things cost money. Not everybody has the same money. How are we going to deal with that? I think recently Saudi and possibly UAE have signed with GPT to say, we'll give everybody a pro license. Everybody, doesn't matter who you are, everybody in the country gets a pro license. That's very different. In India, right, they've really heavily invested in 5G. So I was going up a highway in the middle of nowhere, I had 5G. 4 bars of 5G on my phone. In the middle of London, I can barely get 1 bar of 4G, right?
Really?
So, yeah, it's terrible. So different countries are investing in different things, and infrastructure is a really big part of this. If we want to succeed in this space, infrastructure investment, connectivity, power, stability of broadband, all of these things, as well as device availability, they become sort of standards, almost like saying, we need clean running water, we need electricity, we need internet access, we need devices, we need access to AI. These things are going to need to be resolved at a societal level if this kind of superhuman thing is going to take off in a way that's meaningful to society.
Yep.
But then the other side of it is going to be, well, there are going to be people who are no longer useful at work.
Yeah.
We just have to come to terms with that and figure out a way to deal with it. And figure out a way to deal with it in a way that people are okay with, because
right.
Most people have a large part of their identity tied to their work.
Yeah.
If they're no longer able to work, that's going to mean lots of societal issues, psychological issues, well-being issues, health issues that need to be dealt with. So all of those areas of things like education and health will need to, upskill or get better or have more investment. And the tricky question always comes back to money. Where's all this money coming from? So
yeah.
I think there are a lot of issues to solve before we get to this utopian idea of a superhuman symbiosis between AI and the human. But I think that's probably a dream where we want to say that people can be supported in most of their tasks with appropriate technology. Appropriate means properly governed, safe to use, useful combination of robotics and AI, of course. But I think we can get there if we solve a lot of the other issues as well.
Thank you, Ashwin. Thank you. Hopefully I will get to go to London someday, buy you a beer, coffee, whatever you want to have, and continue the conversation, because this has been truly amazing.
I'll connect you to my hotspot when we're there, because you won't get Wi-Fi.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it very much, and I look forward to having a conversation with you sometime again in the future.
Absolutely. It's been amazing. Thank you for having me.